Hey there everybody, my name is Grant and welcome to GH Books, and this is my very first bookshelf tour. Let's get started. Unlike most bookshelf tours which are done in a single video, I'm going to be splitting this up into about 7 different parts. And so welcome to part 1, which is US history. Okay, so here we have the top left shelf of my library that's in my office. And this shelf is the first of my American history section. I like to divide my history sections by chronological order, as in what the book is about, not chronological order as in when the book was published. And so the first book on this shelf is Puritanism in America, New Culture in a New World by Lazar Ziff. Never read this book, but it's about, early American history, so I'll probably get around to it at some point. I'm probably going to end up saying that about a lot of these books. So this next book is The Intellectual Life of Colonial New England by Samuel Eliot Morison. The first edition of this book was published in 1936, and this is the second edition, which was published in 1956. Like the previous book, I have not yet read this book, but it is on the list. This next book is The French Tradition in America, which is edited by, name I can't pronounce, Zsolt Vanni. It was published in 1969, and I know next to nothing about this book. But, like everything else, it will be eventually read. It's about French America. What are you expecting from me? It basically tells the story of Pontiac's rebellion. This next book is The Conspiracy of Pontiac by Francis Parkman. It basically tells the story of Pontiac's rebellion, which was a rebellion of Indians against the English in the late 17th century. This next book is America Before the Revolution, 1725 to 1775, edited by Alden T. Vaughan. It was published in 1967, and I know next to nothing about this book. This next book is called Albion Seeds: 4 British Folkways in America by David Hackett Fisher. This next book is West of the Revolution: An Uncommon History of 1776 by Claudio Sant. This next book is George Washington's First War: His Early Military Ventures by David A. Clary. This book is a nice compendium with the previous one, and it is The French and Indian War by Walter R. Borman. Next, we finally move into the American Revolutionary period, where we have The Colonial Background of the American Revolution by Charles M. Andrews. That, of course, is followed by The Meaning of the American Revolution by Dan Lancey. And then, depending on your political persuasion, this may or may not be a good sign of it, but this is The American Heritage Book of the Revolution by Bruce Lancaster and J.H. Plum. Next, we have a primary source, The American Crisis by Thomas Paine. And next we come to Rough Crossings by Simon Schama. Next we have The Radicalism of the American Revolution by Gordon S. Wood. Then we have 1776 by David McCullough. Next we have Valley Forge, Pinnacle of Courage by John W. Jackson. Then we have A Struggle for Power: The American Revolution by Theodore Draper. Redcoats and Rebels: The American Revolution Through British Eyes by Christopher Hibbert. Then we have Founding Brothers: The Revolutionary Generation by Joseph J. Ellis. George Washington and Benedict Arnold: A Tale of Two Patriots by Dave R. Palmer. The South and the Revolution, 1763 to 1789 by John Richard Alden. The Glorious Cause: The American Revolution, 1763 to 1789 by Robert Middlecalf, part of the Oxford History of the United States. And finally, for this particular shelf, Thomas Jefferson's Quran, Islam and the Founders by Denise A. Spellberg. We then move to the second shelf, which goes from about the period of the Constitutional Convention through the antebellum United States. And the first book we're looking at is Liberty's Exiles: American Loyalists in the Revolutionary World by Maya Jasanoff. Next we have American Creation: Triumphs and Tragedies at the Founding of the Republic by the same author as Founding Brothers, Joseph J. Ellis. Then we have The First Congress: How James Madison, George Washington, and a Group of Extraordinary Men Invented the Government by Fergus M. Bordwich. And then we have An Artist in Treason: The Extraordinary Double Life of General James Wilkinson by Andrew Linklater. We follow that with The Whiskey Rebellion by William Hodgland, which is then followed by American Leviathan: Empire, Nation, and Revolutionary Frontier by Patrick Griffin. We then have another older book, The Beginnings of American Foreign Policy to the Farewell Address by Felix Gilbert. Then we have A Magnificent Catastrophe: The Tumultuous Election of 1800, America's First Presidential Campaign by Edward J. Larson. Our next book covers the same topic, Adams vs. Jefferson: The Tumultuous Election of 1800 by John Ferling, which is followed by Gabriel's Rebellion: The Virginia Slave Conspiracies of 1800 and 1802 by Douglas R. Egerton. Next is Mr. Jefferson's Lost Cause: Land, Farmers, Slavery and the Louisiana Purchase by Roger G. Kennedy. Next we have Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates, The Forgotten War That Changed American History by Brian Kilmeade. And this particular copy is special because it is autographed by the author. This is followed by Glorious Adventures, Nikolai Rezanov and the Dream of a Russian America by Owen Matthews. And next is Founding Rivals, Madison vs. Monroe, The Bill of Rights and the Election That Saved America by Chris DeRose. Here we have another entry into the Oxford U.S. History series, Empire of Liberty by Gordon S. Wood. From here we head into the post-1812 America with Liberty and Power, The Politics of Jacksonian America by Harry L. Watson. We continue the Jackson theme with Ideology and Power in the Age of Jackson with an introduction by Edwin C. Roswink. Up next is The Freedom of Thought Struggle in the Old South by Clement Eaton. Up next is the book I've actually reviewed before on this channel, Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville. Up next I have some California state history, and we are going with The Bear Flag Rising, The Conquest of California, 1846 by Dale L. Walker. Then we have Gold Rush Politics, California's First Legislature by Mary Jo Iganoff, which is then followed by The World Rushed In, The California Gold Rush Experience, an eyewitness account of a nation heading west by J.S. Holliday. And then we have a more academic text, Anti-Slavery Reconsidered, New Perspectives on the Abolitionists, edited by Lewis Perry and Michael Fellman. This next book doesn't have a cover, but it is The Presidencies of Zachary Taylor and Millard Fillmore by Elbert B. Smith. The next book we have is Devil's Gate, Brigham Young and the Great Mormon Handcart Tragedy by David Roberts. The last book in our journey through antebellum United States is Knights of the Golden Circle, Secret Empire, Southern Secession, and Civil War by David C. Keene. And here we have the final shelf of my U.S. history section. And here we're going to start with two different texts about the Civil War. We have The Rise of the Confederate Government and The Fall of the Confederate Government by CSA President Jefferson Davis. This is followed by Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Next we have Embattled Rebel, Jefferson Davis's Commander-in-Chief by James N. McPherson. And next we have something of a more controversial book, Black Confederates. Then we have Europe Looks at the Civil War, which is followed by The Colony, the harrowing true story of the exiles of Molokai. Next we have Russian America, The Great Alaskan Venture, 1741 to 1867 by Hector Chevinsky. Then we have 12 Against Empire, The Anti-Imperialists from 1898 to 1900 by Robert L. Belzner. So that should be followed by The War Lovers, Roosevelt, Lodge, Hearst, and the Rush to Empire in 1898 by Evan Thomas, followed by James Bradley's The Imperial Cruise, A Secret History of Empire and War. Next we have The Origins of American Intervention in the First World War by Ross Gregory. Then we have War and the Intellectuals, Collected Essays from 1915 to 1919. Next we have American Communism and Soviet Russia by Theodore Draper. Cadillac Desert, The American West and the Disappearing Water by Mark Reisner. Then we have the 9/11 Commission Report. Next we have Deliver the Vote, A History of Election Fraud, an American Political Tradition from 1742 to 2004 by Tracy Campbell. These next two books I often feel the need to display together simply to balance each other out. On your left is Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States, and on your right is A Patriot's History of the United States by Larry Schweikart and Michael Allen. We then have another entry into the Oxford History of the United States series, From Colony to Superpower, U.S. Foreign Relations since 1776 by George C. Herring. Now that does it for today's portion of the bookshelf tour. I'll be back on Thursday to review my European history section. So, until next time, thanks for watching and keep reading.